Good day, fellow moviegoers, and welcome back to another episode of Hammer D20, the show that can't wait for that snow to come down. If only for it so I don't feel so guilty when I'm staying inside all the time. My name is Steven Sobot, and I will be your guide. Today we're going to speak to two artistic creators. One, a director of one of the films I reviewed during the Hamilton Film Festival, and another, a comic book creator who I met during the Hamilton Comic Con. The first guest is AJ Bate, the director of the film Sincerely Yours, one of the films I enjoyed watching during this year's film festival. I spoke to AJ about the film, why he made it, how it was making it, his process and inspiration, and a bunch of other stuff. Steven, over to you. Well, thank you, Steven. Now, AJ, what was Sincerely Yours?
Sincerely Yours was a short film that we made last summer, and it revolves around a middle-aged woman who recently just got divorced, and her mother also recently passed away. And so that kind of leads her to explore her relationship with her siblings and how different all of them have a relationship with the matriarch, and how much that has affect or led to her divorce, and how much that has affected her relationship with her own daughter, and just deciding whether she goes down the same path of making the same mistakes or hopefully doing something differently.
Perfect. The biggest thing is it felt like it was an actual person. Like you're like in a conversation with that person, and I can easily see I've dealt with exactly that, right? For this story, kind of like what's your inspiration? Where did the story come from?
Sure. So Val Cole was the one that honestly we were talking, and myself and Joe Patello, who's my co-producer and like business partner in this production company, we were trying to think of like a new project that we wanted to work on, and just started kind of struggling. And I remember myself and Joe and Val, we were hanging out summer night in the backyard, and we were just talking, and then she started to kind of just open up and talk about her life and her relationship with her parents, and she shared with us some like very like really interesting like personal stories and experiences, and I was just like so fascinated by it. And then I think like I've heard a lot of like filmmakers and writers say this, whereas like even if you're writing something that has nothing to do with you, eventually you end up in a way writing about yourself. And so I started to reflect on my life and what my relationship with my parents. I'm the oldest. I don't know if you have any siblings or not. But
I do. I'm actually the youngest. So
okay. So yeah.
Interestingly, I'm pretty sure it was the other sister. She was the youngest. Yeah.
Yes.
And that also hit me. I was very much like, I feel like I'm in that position sometimes, right?
Yes, that's the thing, and it is that your parents are human beings, and you don't realize that until like later in your life. And you start to understand that your relationship with them is different from how your siblings have. Every sibling has they kind of contextualize or see their parents differently from one another. Like I'm the oldest of four, so I have three different perspectives, or like completely different from how I perceive my parents. Which I thought that was like very interesting and fascinating for me. And plus, it's always just fun to write about families. Like families are it's just endless stories there. Everybody's family is just insane and crazy and just so dramatic. And there's always a way where like I feel like you're one person when you're with your parents, and then you're another person when you're with everybody else. There's a thing when you're with your parents, they know how to push your buttons in a way. They just know how to, where you feel like you revert to being a child. You could be like 40 years old with a mortgage, 3 kids, and you're like, you could be successful or whatever it is. But when you're with your parents, you revert back to being 11 years old somehow. It's just something that just like the effect that parents have on us forever. I mean, you could have the worst relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
It's so surprising to me when I hear people say like, oh, I haven't talked to my dad in 10 years. But it's like, but you probably think about him probably every day. You know what I mean? Like your parents just will never leave you, regardless of whether you have the best relationship with them or the worst relationship with them. They're a part of you forever and ever, you know?
Exactly. That's what
That's
makes the great story so great. Like again, it hits you at a place that very much like you can relate to in a lot of ways, right?
I hope so. I hope
But
so. Yeah.
yeah. So you mentioned it was finished this summer. How was it? How was it making? How long did it take to make? Kind of generally.
Sorry, we finished it. I apologize. The
That's okay.
editing, the final cut was done in I want to say February of this year.
Oh,
We filmed it last summer. Um,
okay.
yeah, so it took me like 6 months to write it. I started in September of 2020, and then I had a good solid draft by March or April of 21, and then we started getting the team together. And we started filming in June. We were only able to film on weekends. That's just the nature of, when you start out,
Yeah.
people have jobs, and especially when you're not paying people, it's very hard to, get them to leave their jobs and come and do this. So we only exclusively shot for weekends. It took us about 17 shooting days, I want to say. So took us well into September. So we started in June, and I think the end of September, maybe even October is when we shot like the final thing. So it was only on the weekends. And we took our time a lot. I kind of, I'm very lucky. Like there were times where I was pushing because the take wasn't right. So we did like 10 takes for some scenes. Some scenes took even 12 takes. I try not to do that as much as I can, but in good consciousness, if I feel like I don't have it, then I can't. So part of it took longer because of me and what I was looking for.
I guess what like are you part-time filmmaker, like full-time filmmaker? Like what? How is filmmaking kind of in your career or in your life?
I mean, it's taking all my time, but I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily like making a living as a filmmaker yet. Things have been progressing, very nicely, especially with this last project and the small, very, albeit very small doors, but it has opened some doors for us for some future projects, which I'm very happy about. And we're turning, hopefully eventually down the road, we'll turn into a full-time thing. But it is taking all my time, but which I'm gladly happy to dedicate my time to, obviously.
Excellent, perfect. When did you start kind of getting into filmmaking?
Well, I mean, it's the cliche thing where like I've always wanted to do it, but like because of my background, I never really had the opportunity to get into it. Um, and when COVID happened, I'm a stand-up comedian, and during COVID,
Oh,
we weren't able to do any shows. So I felt like I don't know how long this is going to go for. So however long it is, let's say a year or 2 year, I don't want to be sitting on my behind and just not doing anything. I have to, you know, rediscover things or figure out. And then well, I was like, well, I always wanted to make movies, so what better time to do that than now? Like I have all the time in the world. So
there
I
you go.
started, yeah, April 2020. We made our first short film, and in the last 2 years, we've made about four short films, and we were, just kind of like film school, putting ourselves through film school, and just, kind of getting better with every project.
Your experience with the Hamilton Film Festival, how has that been just generally?
It was great. I mean, it was honestly great. I mean, Nathan Fleet, who put this all together, is he's from the very short time that I've gotten to know him over the course of the festival, he's just been nothing but extremely tremendously helpful. And just the amount of you just realize like how many people are in the area, not like coming even from Toronto to be in here, and just seeing just how many people are just willing to like kind of even work with each other on future stuff and just collaborating, making connections. It's definitely like, yeah, it was definitely a great experience. Absolutely. Hmm.
I also saw in the film festival there's a whole thing about it was the pitch. There was like a 30-minute
Yes,
pitch you can do, and it
yes,
sounds like you
yes.
and your co-director won something of that. What was that about?
Yeah, so my co-producer Joe Botello came up with an idea for our short film, and it was called Alone. We titled it Alone. He came up with an idea, but then we kind of fixed it a little bit, not fixed it, but like just kind of beefed it up a little bit, and we it was our first pitch, and we won the pitch. It was a 30-second pitch, and we won, and they gave us $1,000, and Hamilton Film Studios also gave us a $50 gift card, so a certificate,
Oh,
sorry. So, thank you to both Hamilton Film Festival and Hamilton Film Studios for choosing us, and we're actually right now in pre-production for this short film, and so we're casting, and we're getting the crew again, looking for more money because we want to, make something a bit next level. But yeah, we're right now jumping into the next project. Just it gave us all the momentum we need to like get started. Honestly, it was it was such a great feeling. It was our first pitch too, so honestly did not expect us to win, but man, we pulled it off.
Perfect. And that kind of like segues nicely into the next question of like what
hmm
plans you got going on in the future. I'm guessing it's this.
Yes, we have this one. We also have a show that we wrote about like my first 2 years of living in Canada because I immigrated originally from Libya about 8 years ago. So a show about the first 2 years of not necessarily just about me, it's just about like just in generally living in Canada, being new here. So that is something that's in the works. It's not yet like solidified, but it's
Mm.
something that we're working on. And yeah, we got a feature script that I just finished writing recently, my first feature script, and got a lot of stuff working on, and hopefully, just putting what do they say? Like just putting a lot of pots or whatever on the stove, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's not putting the eggs and not in one basket, whatever the
Sick. Yeah.
saying.
You mentioned stand-up comedian. Do you want
hmm
to talk a bit about that? That's kind of
Sure.
crazy. Yeah.
No, sure. Yeah, I started about 6 years ago, 2016.
Mhm.
I started doing stand-up comedy. I started out in even though at the time I lived in Hamilton, I started in Toronto because I didn't know that Hamilton had a comedy scene. And every time I would go to Toronto, perform there, and the comedians there would tell me like, "Oh, there's a Hamilton scene," and I'm like, I didn't know that." And so I like at the time I was living in Hamilton. I moved to Toronto recently, but like when I was living in Hamilton, I went there, and then I just found out that there's like these just group of comics that were hanging out. It used to be a place called Cayley House. I don't think it's called Cayley House anymore. It's on Hess.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they used to have like the Monday open mic, and that was a wild, crazy time.
Oh.
It was the epitome of an open mic, just chaos, people drunk, not paying attention, and just saying awful, horrible things to the comics, and then the comics saying even more horrible things back to them. But it was a great time, and we have places like Levity Comedy Club now that used to be the old Yak Yaks. That's also a great place for comedy too. But yeah, stand-up comedy's been I think like it's been very it's I've made a lot of progress, especially this last year in terms of my career wise and stuff like that, and especially with the film stuff, it's helped. Like they kind of both like feed into each other.
Mm.
So yeah, just in generally speaking, like I think it's like every year just gets better and better with all that stuff, and I think that's kind of what you want at the end of is you want to see progress every year, and it took a while to see a big improvement or to see, the fruits of the labor pay off, but it's starting slowly to do that. So I'm very, very happy. I'm very proud of where I'm at right now with it. It's pretty good.
Perfect. Fantastic. And this is kind of just the last kind of bit of a
No,
fluff
no
question kind
worries.
of thing.
Ask away.
And I guess what would you say is like one of your what would you think are probably your top three favorite films? That's a hard question. I probably should have written that down in the emails to give you some time to think about it.
No,
But
I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't think I would. Okay. All right. I'm probably gonna regret this list because I'm gonna change it. But who cares? I'm gonna go with my gut. I would say, um, I have to pick one film of his. I can't pick two.
okay.
I'm gonna say There Will Be Blood, Paul
Mhm.
Thomas Anderson. I would say Mother by Bong Joon-ho
Okay.
is amazing. Number three, I'm gonna say Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick.
Interesting. Okay.
I
I haven't
think I'm
seen I
gonna.
actually haven't heard of Barry Lyndon.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Fantastic. No, that's great. That's great. That's the biggest thing I find, especially with someone in filmmaking. Additionally, also you're also in like a side the other career of stand-up comedy, as you mentioned. They're
hmm
kind of the same realm of theatrics, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
in a way, yeah, in
like
a
I
way, yeah.
try to see what you guys are kind of into, kind of thing.
I don't like
Interesting.
comedies. I don't like comedies at all.
Interesting.
I'm not a big fan of comedies. I love comedy on stage, but in movies and shows, I'm not a big fan of comedies. Like maybe Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm, but other than that, like not much. Not a big fan of comedies. I like my funniest movies, in my opinion, are the ones that are like so serious. It's like so dark. Like those are the
Huh.
funny ones. Like yeah, Raging Bull
Interesting.
has some of my favorite lines. Like some of the funniest lines ever.
Interesting. Interesting. I like that.
Mhm.
With that, I think that's a for perfect kind of close off for this. Thank you so much for your time, AJ.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
Excellent. And I'm just going to throw it back to you, Steven. Thank you, Steven. Before we move on to our next segment, let's take a short break. See you soon. Welcome back. So, my next guest for this episode is Rick Piper, the creator of Cross Comics. Now, what is Cross Comics, you ask? Cross Comics is a local comic book company that is meant to be an alternative to the mainstream comic book industry, featuring Canadian superheroes that are affected or powered through divine intervention from God. As said on the website, Cross Comics loves God first, people second, and comics third. So I spoke to Rick about Cross Comics, what it's all about, who are his main cast, why he started it, and what he has planned for the future. Steven, over to you. Thank you, Steven. Rick, what exactly is Cross Comics?
Cross Comics is obviously a comic company that I created quite some time ago, back in my teens. Because I would grew up watching, Super Friends and all that sort of stuff. I'm born in the '70s, so I watched all the superhero stuff in that, and then I got into like reading the comics, and I noticed I'm a Christian, and I noticed there wasn't any real Christian superheroes. Yes, you have all your Bible story, and some of those guys could be probably considered in today's terms superheroes.
Yeah,
Samson with its super strength and all that.
yeah.
But I decided, okay, why don't I create the Christian superheroes? So
Huh.
at that point, that's when Cross Comics was born. I didn't have that name back then, but I started developing my own characters and all that. Of course, they were nowhere near as developed as they are now. So the short version is a Christian comic company, but we try not to bang, it over your head because, you want to draw people in, but so you can't bang it over their head. So, the heroes are Christian. They, tell a little bit of, the Christ thing, most of the time God is responsible for them becoming the hero in some way.
So Cross Comics, and that's like the companies, and I see in the background, and I saw at the Hamilton Comic Con, Canadian Shield. Now, okay, first, the big question that everyone was probably asking now: who is Canadian Shield? Who is that guy?
Canadian Shield is a Native American born in the early 1800s. He is transported by God through time to present day, modern day, however you want to word that. And not to give him a culture shock because he is from the Hamilton area back in the 1800s. But I put him up way, way, way up north, like nowhere near civilization. So he's put 100 miles north of that, So, and then God takes a suit from the future that is advanced, made by the Canadian government in secret, sort of like Alpha Flight,
Yep.
Department H of Marvel, but Cross Comics version. So
Excellent. Yep.
they developed this Canadian suit that enhances the wearer's abilities. Basically making him into a virtual Superman, except for like the heat vision, cold breath type thing.
Yeah.
So he takes the suit, transports it back through time to present day, modern day, where he's put the Canadian shield, and the suit appears there. A second or two later, God sends an angel to tell him to put the suit on and travel south. He's going to eventually make his way back to Hamilton.
So most of the stories, I'm assuming, aren't just the travels. It's more so him when he's in Hamilton, yeah?
No, they're going to be the first about 17, 18 issues are going to be the travel.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
He's going to fight villain. He's going to fight villains along the way. I have already a little basic map planned out. Travel. He starts in one city and ends in another city in an issue, and in the next issue, except for the first issue, He starts in the next comic. He'll start in the city that he left off on, and then end up in another city.
I guess then you mentioned 17 issues. Does he? I'm assuming he doesn't just have one villain. Is there one reoccurring?
There's a multitude of villains. I'm right now, and I've crowdfunded number 2. It's almost done. It should actually be hopefully be printed in January and delivered to people.
Okay.
That's still in demand on Indiegogo for anybody who wants to get it.
Excellent.
I have several other characters that I'm bringing out. In fact, in the campaign for his issue 2, I have issue 1 of my character Snowdrift.
Okay.
So, and with each campaign I do, I'm going to be adding another character when I get up to, we'll say, campaign 7. So
Gotcha.
I have 7 main characters, which will eventually form my Avengers or Justice League, if you will.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. You mentioned Snowdrift. Who's that? What's that all about?
She is a co-based character, as the name sort of suggests.
Yes, yeah.
She was in 1950. She gets accepted to do some sort of research thing up in the Canadian Arctic, and so she's leading the expedition. It takes about a year to get her group together, and a freak snowstorm hits. Exhaustion and trying to get back to base camp, if you will. Mm-hmm. She ends up falling down and getting buried in snow. But as she does, she's like, "Help, God!" And God sort of puts her into a suspended animation type thing, frozen, and sort of making snow and ice part of her or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And then again, modern day, present day. A guy that's living up in that area named Rick Arrow, he ends up going out from a walk from his cabin. He finds her all unburied because, over the, 70 years or so, the snow gets all blown away, and he finds her, picks her up, brings her to his cabin, just by the nudging of God, puts her in front of the fire, and she thaws out. And so she's got her powers, and then, he helps her get relocated back into society, and that, and then there's an incident she ends up becoming a waitress. There ends up being like a robbery, so the staff all get put in the freezer. Jeez, everybody else passes out. She's wondering why. She starts struggling with the door to try and get it thing because the crooks locked it. As she's doing it and getting frustrated, suddenly the door and everything around the door just becomes solid ice. What the?
Oh, they're cool.
Then, she's like, "What the heck?" And whams on the ice, it just breaks.
Sick. You mentioned earlier before we even did this interview that you were not only creator and I guess like the owner of the Cross Comics, but you've done also illustrations in this and that. So like, what part of the comics do you do?
In the first book, I did the pencils, a little bit of the inks. Then a friend of mine from California beefed up my inks, made them better, That was for the first book. For these 2 books, I'm doing the coloring. For my 2 books that are on Indiegogo, I've been doing the coloring. I hired somebody else out for the inking, the penciling and the inking. They're better than me, so hey, I've got no problems with that, although I've been slowly getting better. So Canadian Shield 3, I'm thinking of trying to do it myself. Digitally.
What have you taken as inspiration?
Well, I definitely say DC and Marvel. They're different things. I take the good stuff out of them. Some of the try and get rid of the bad. Like their continuity is not really good. I like to try and keep a good continuity right from the start.
Yeah.
My Christian faith, obviously, because
right
stuff, and it's supposed to be a Christian comic company, so going to take some inspiration from there too.
Sure. Where can you find Cross Comics material and where can you purchase it?
At the moment, you can purchase it on Indiegogo because I'm proud. Well, it's in demand. Like I said, I did a crowdfunding back on June 24th. I've been coloring it since. And what else? You can also get some. Once the Indiegogo is shut down, you can obviously get stuff on my website across comics. I've got to reprint some issue 1, so Right now, the only digital is available for number one.
So you've been to Hamilton Comic Con. Are there any future cons that you're planning on going to?
I do want to get to some. I'm not sure what. There's a pop culture Canada cons. I'm not sure what you've heard of them. I've seen them through Facebook.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of those. I went down to like LA to a Christian Comic Con.
Oh, really nice. Oh, what's that called?
Alpha Omega Con.
And how was that? Just out of curiosity.
That wasn't bad. I didn't make any money, but I took a bus all the way there and all the way back from Buffalo. That was an experience seeing the state's countryside. I stayed in LA for 5 days a week. So, that was pretty, neat too. So I'm willing to, if I have the money, I'm willing to go to extraordinary lengths.
Yeah. To get this. Yeah. Well, I mean, so, you're putting the work in, Rick, and I'm happy for you. I wish all the success for you. And with that, I think I'm just going to say, I'm going to throw it back to you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. That's all the time we have for Hammer D20. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and this season so far. I'll be returning in the new year, so I hope to wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and everything in between. See you soon.